Canada turning into a rogue state? Are Khalistani elements influencing Canada's foreign policy? Is Justin Trudeau taking policy notes from terrorists now? Well, you're watching India Today Global with me, Ishita Mitra, and these are some of the questions we'll unpack today. Now, Canada-India clash, the controversy, the meltdown is just refusing to go away, more so because Canada continues to expose itself. So far, the story has been pretty simple. Canada is accusing Indian officials of having a role and engaging in illegal and criminal activities on its soil, including the murder of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar, but has refused to provide any evidence so far. And this is despite the fact that Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau first went public with these allegations about a year ago. So joining me now is Daniel Bordman. He's a senior correspondent at the National Telegraph and he's been closely tracking the story in Canada. So thank you, Daniel, for joining us. All right. So my first question to you is that Justin Trudeau has now admitted publicly that when India asked him for evidence, he didn't have much to offer other than intel. So what do you make of this statement and why the man continues to make a mockery of himself?
There's no real explaining as to why Justin Trudeau does anything he does. Yes, he came up flat. And if you're going to make accusations against an ally, especially an ally that shares shared alliances, and something as serious as this, where you're going to the steps to start accusing diplomats, you're going to need hard evidence. So Trudeau didn't come up with hard evidence that presented intelligence. And my analogy here is in the game of Clue, you need there's a body, you have to solve the mystery, you need three things, right? Colonel Mustard in the conservatory with the candlestick. What Canada has managed to prove is that, Colonel Mustard was in the conservatory. There is no candlestick that we've provided. So on a technicality, on a legal point, right, India wins here because they get to say, no, you didn't technically get it right. Canada will continue to say that it's not that we didn't provide nothing. We provided intel that there was a possible association. I mean, many people go to the Indian consulate or high commissioner and just meeting with someone doesn't constitute anything, especially when we're talking about diplomatic relations. But Justin Trudeau is likely using this to hopefully, this is the lower scandal in Canada right now, the complete flop. Yes, that's bad, and the media is running cover for him. But the real problem he's facing in Canada is that there's 11 traitors to Parliament, and he's being grilled on his own foreign interference. This is the real scandal in Canada right now, is that there's 11 MPs who are intelligence agencies are suggesting are foreign assets, and Justin Trudeau won't release their names. And that's the big scandal in Canada right now.
So do you think this clash with Indian government is just a distraction to hide away from the bigger story that you claim?
I don't think it is just a distraction. I think this is a confluence of many different things, right? You can bring in the fragility of the Liberal NDP alliance, which might have triggered this. The timing is certainly auspicious if you're Justin Trudeau to start this. There was no need to expedite a fight. There seems to be a coordinated push to get this story into the Canadian media to really drum it up and, have people accuse India of state terrorism in Canada for, what's really a Khalistani gang problem or terrorist gang problem, depending on how you define what's going on. So I do think there is an element of some distraction, some trying to rally the flag moment. But with Trudeau, there's always another scandal. So he tried to turn this foreign interference hearing against himself really into a weapon against the Conservative Party, and that is also blown up in his face.
Now, another major statement that was given by Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, a designated terrorist by New Delhi. So he's the head of an extremist organization, Seeks for Justice, and he said that he has been in touch with the Prime Minister's office for the past 2 to 3 years. So tell me, as someone who's been following Canadian politics for long, what is the scale of influence that Khalistanis hold today over the Canadian government?
Well, it seems to be pretty bad. And we knew it was bad because there are ways to infiltrate the nomination ridings quite easily. Another scandal that people are now paying attention to is fun fact, you don't need to be a Canadian citizen to vote in a Liberal leadership party nomination or the nomination process. So Chinese nationals, Pakistani nationals, Indian foreign nationals, if India really wanted to influence the Liberal Party in government, you could theoretically force and stack a bunch of your citizens. You You don't need to be Canadian citizens. You could fly people in from India and just have them all vote in liberal nominations and get that way. So it's it's such a convoluted web of distrust. And the Khalistanis have about 25 ridings where they have significant influence. They managed to get parliamentary, cabinet positions within the Trudeau government. Jagmeet Singh is clearly ideologically aligned with them. And now with the fact that Panun, who, and it's important to know he's not a listed terrorist in Canada or the States. And I understand the problems there because like he constantly makes threats threatening to genocide Hindus and Indian Canadians constantly and harassing them and advocating for violence against identifiable ethnic groups all the time. But he is not a terrorist, and Canada under Trudeau took Khalistan off the designated terror watch list. So the amount of political victories the Khalistanis are able to get is immense. And now it's an incredibly disturbing to hear that I'm on like Hanun is seemed to be in touch with the Canadian intelligence industries, like and giving them feedback. Again, this is a man who, after the October 7th terrorist attacks, got made a video praising them, praising Hamas for what they did, and said this is what his organization seeks to do worldwide to Hindus until they get a Khalistan. I mean, this guy's a lunatic. He's a dangerous lunatic, and it'd be one thing if you had to inform him because he's a dual citizen of a potential threat on his life. That's one thing you can say, okay, they can understand, but you cannot explain away, relying on Sikhs for justice for intelligence. And this is kind of shows like Canada's claims seem like they were cooked up in Panun's head, and it turns out they were. So, I mean, the whole thing is a clown show. Um, Justin Trudeau's only saving grace is that no one in the country outside of like 15 of us know what the Khalistani movement is. So he's able to, I guess, get away with just and the CBC just getting away with blatant support for people who should be listed as terrorists.
All right. Let's go a bit deeper into this. One thing that continues to baffle people around the globe is that Sikh community represents about 2% of Canada's population. And now out of this also, and I want to emphasize on this, that out of this is a very small section of people who actually support Khalistanis. So why does the Trudeau government continue to pander to this extremist organization and their demands? Like, is it money? Is there something bigger going on?
Money. There's much more money and criminal activity involved in here. The answer is money. There's tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of illicit money laundering going on in Canada. The whole student visa frauds and a lot of the, basically human trafficking kids out of the Punjab to take them to universities in Canada, which sometimes are real, sometimes are not real. You should do your research before you come up with this, but the Khalistanis are deeply involved. And there's tons of money and slush funds and dark money involved in all of this. Again, the Khalistan movement is backed by the ISI. We know it was created by them. Reports show that it's now, I mean, and if you look at Panun's behavior, it looks like they're also CCP aligned these days. So there's just lots and lots and lots of money, and they wield political influence in the country. They're incredibly violent. They threaten anyone who opposes them. The Canadian law enforcement agencies are incredibly weak. We don't seem to enforce any hate speech or even moral standards when things aren't said in English, because I don't know if we are too lazy or too arrogant to read the translation of whatever is said under these things. But the Khalistanis have managed to sort of gain control of many Gurdwaras. They really force themselves into the nomination process, which again are there's no laws on electoral fraud inside Canadian internal elections. So you can't rig a Canadian election between the Liberals and the Conservatives and NDP. Like it's illegal to rig a federal election, but it's not illegal to rig a Liberal Party, a Conservative Party, an NDP. Internal party elections in Canada are the complete Wild West. So the communities that are more violent and well funded tend to do better in Canadian politics. So through this, laissez-faire, pie in the sky look of oh, we're Canada, nothing ever bad ever happens here. We've allowed a pretty belligerent, noisy, and well-funded group to gain significant political power, even though they're just a small fringe, but they've managed to really effectuate the first past the post system. And in nomination ridings where there's so few people voting anyway, and we're cheating and where you don't even need to be a Canadian citizen to vote, right? Just come on in. and vote for who should be the next leaders of our country. Why not? So this type of attitude is easy to hijack, and organizations like the IRGC, the CCP, the ISI, all different bad actors can infiltrate the Canadian electoral system. It's rather easy, and this is why we're having a whole hearing on foreign interference.
All right. See, okay, so you are in Canada. So tell me about what's the mood on ground. How are Canadians reacting to this situation that is developing with India? And also, since you are someone who's well connected with the Indian community, what's their reaction like?
So I can start with the Indian Canadian community. They're very concerned because they understand it, and rightfully so. I share these concerns. This is going to lead to increased violence against them. Right? We've already seen the threats against Air India flights ramping up from the Khalistanis, and when they get a win, they get much more rowdy. The idea that if we can just appease extremists and give them little wins here or there, that will satiate them and make them adjust into our society as moderates. That is counterfactual, and it always makes them more extreme, more violent, and more aggressive. So the Hindu community is fearful. Jagmeet Singh is starting a campaign to try and list the RSS as a banned group in Canada and take your opinions of the RSS aside. I mean, it's a clear political ploy that if you ban the RSS, they would then start calling any Hindu organization RSS linked, and then use that as an attack on them and an excuse to blockade their events and harass them and all that. And the Khalistanis absolutely will do this. I mean, Hindus are the points where their events are starting to be harassed and vandalized because again, the Khalistanis have been doing it for years, but they see the Islamists doing it to the Jewish community, so they've learned it's acceptable. And the general Canadian view, it's sort of like baked in the pie. A lot of Canadians don't understand what's going on because they don't understand Khalistan, like India state terror. It's kind of coming out of nowhere. And if they're if they're in the 10% of the country that is like a Justin Trudeau diehard supporter, then they're listening to everything that's said on the CBC, and they're going, "Oh my God, India is a terrorist state, and Narendra Modi is going to come eat my children in the bed, while I sleep." There's that, but the vast majority of Canadians don't have any faith in Justin Trudeau. And again, if you're a conservative Canadian, he tried the rally to the flag moment lasted about 15 seconds. He couldn't put his ego aside for more than a day, and then started to use his own scandals to try and attack the conservatives, which is the like sideshow Bob step on a rake strategy. So that blew up in his face. And Canadians, if you're on the political right or center, or you're not really, if you're sort of anti-Trudeau, which is the majority of the country now, they're kind of like, I don't want to say on India's side, but using the prolific internet meme economy that is the Indian public, and are sort of enjoying their hot shots at our prime minister. That's, I guess, a diplomatic way of putting the general mood there. So it's either complete ignorance of the Khalistani file and blind obedience to Trudeau, which might be about 10% of the country. Most people would have no idea what this is, or have moved on to other scandals. And then anyone who paid attention, I'd say the vast majority of it, have said, yeah, I don't believe Justin Trudeau on issues of safety or security, because he's been incredibly soft on crime, on terrorism, and all these things that if you've been paying attention, you know that Justin Trudeau cares about none of the things he's claiming to care about right now. So I think with also Twitter and the internet, the ability to sort of see the Indian point of view, if you're on alternative media sources, that part of the population is less likely to jump off this cliff with Justin Trudeau and start kicking out Indian diplomats. But we're not in charge of the country. That's Justin Trudeau and Katie Telford. So off the cliff we go.
Okay. So my second last question to you is, how do you think this is going to impact domestic politics at home? Like, we have seen conservatives cornering Trudeau on this one. How do you think this will go ahead?
Yeah, I mean, he's already cornered. It's a corpse. He's a dead man walking. You can't. Justin Trudeau is holding on to power. His power requires that he made a Faustian bargain with the NDP. This was the whole Jagmeet thing. I mean, one of the reasons he's doing so poorly is the Liberals and the NDP are never meant to be in a coalition. It will destroy both of them long term, and that goes into some internal historical Canadian politics that I won't bore everyone with. But Justin Trudeau is a dead man walking electorally. The Conservatives are currently beating the Liberals and the NDP put together. They're on track for a supermajority. People are fed up with the economy and all this, mass migration, all this stuff, all the type of things that I mean, all the chickens have come home to roost. Every one of Justin Trudeau's social experiments over the last 10 years has collapsed. The entire worldview has been shown to be shallow. He's alienated every community that isn't one of his, hardcore. Even the extremist community. I mean, even the most extremist Islamists are not happy because Canada isn't bombing Tel Aviv right now. So even under that demographic, which got to vote for him en masse, like there's no one really happy with him right now. So there's nothing he can do to win the next election other than like outright cheat and like make up fake like in a cockamamie scheme, which it doesn't look like that's not going to happen. But in terms of getting the people in Canada to vote for him, that ship has sailed. They have lost strongholds in Toronto and Montreal. If you these Montreal ridings they're basically, they should be, I mean, you don't even need to vote. They're always liberal. And the fact that they lost them, ridings that they usually win running away by 20 plus points, yeah, they're Justin Trudeau's again a political corpse moving around for one more year. There is a 0% chance that the Liberals gain power, and we're just going to see. The question for the Liberals is will they be the official opposition? Will they manage to come in second place? Right now, some polls have them in fourth, behind a Bloc Québécois, which is a French separatist party that only exists in one province, and he's beating Justin Trudeau nationally in the polls, and the NDP. The official opposition right now is set to be the Bloc Québécois. That shows you how unpopular the Trudeau-Singh coalition ended up being.
All right. My last question for you. Canada-India ties are right now at an all-time low, but they were better under previous Prime Minister Stephen Harper, but it's been a downhill battle ever since. So do you think we have chances of improving these ties under the next government, as you claim?
I think we do. That was my most positive news of the day. The statement from the Indian government was that they put the blame solely on Justin Trudeau, which is nice. They didn't say the Liberals. They didn't say the Singh coalition. They didn't even broaden it out. They said the responsibility lies with the Prime Minister. So to most people, that's a sort of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Okay, we know this guy's a dead man walking a corpse. There's a lot of extremists in his party. No one wants to go nuclear and start some trade between G7 countries and India. Like, it's all ridiculous. It's all counterproductive. It's all stupid. It never should have got to this point. It's incredibly mismanaged. And you know, I do have. I mean, our relations with most countries, except for slave states and terrorist states, countries that aren't run on slavery or terrorism, our relationships with them were all much better under Stephen Harper, and have now gotten worse under Justin Trudeau. But we do have the growing support of the slave state / terrorist economy countries. So I guess that's take the victories where you can get them if you're a Canadian these days.
So thank you, Daniel, for speaking to us and unpacking the whole India-Canada diplomatic clash. We'll be coming back to you for more updates on this. Stay tuned to India Today Global for more such updates.